Yeah, the brace is the hardest part to learn. If we all had an amazing brace, we'd all be fucking squatting like demons. But the reality is, it is hard. It's part of the skill acquirement, and your squat and deadlift, particularly squat variations and deadlifts, are always going to be limited by the weakest link, which in those movements are going to be the three pillars that I talk about: the hip stability, core stability, and the upper back tightness. I think women who have had children, for sure, are always going to be affected a little bit more by the bracing ability, because of all the wonderful stuff that happens at birth, especially if you've had multiple kids. I think it's just a level that it's always going to be that much harder. Does that mean that you can't ever get it? No, I just think it just means you need to work harder at it. Probably get the lovely April to talk about the Kegel balls, or whatever they're called. I think they're called something else. But you do all these wonderful things with these balls and inserting them in places that I don't want to talk about, but that can help with all that sort of stuff. But the reality is, you're losing your brace. Typically, when we're looking at a video, you can always see when someone loses their brace by the acceleration that happens when they get to the bottom. So they go down, 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 and then it gets this acceleration as they get into the bottom. And it's at that part there we go, that's where they lose it. Because they're like, I'm maintaining, and it just falls down. And I mean, that's going to happen like as you progress heavier and heavier with weights. Like the reality is a lot of the time, not always, but for a lot of the time, like your quad and glute strength might actually be strong enough at that particular weight to handle that particular weight. But it's the weak link of your core being able to maintain that load in that full range of motion that lets you down. So ultimately, obviously using a belt, I would always say, regardless of when you're doing it, your squats, anything, just always use the belt. Even with you doing the warm-ups, use the belt. Learn to actually breathe into the belt. Make sure you take your warm-up reps seriously to get that. But basically, what we need to think about with the brace is it's essentially you're trying to exhalate against a forced air, against a trapped airway. So you're trying to force the air out as you're breathing. So if you go like that, you can just do it through your nose. If you stick your two thumbs into the side of your guts like that, and you just go like that, you're breathing into the lowest part of your abdomen because it's expanded out, right? So you're breathing in like that, and then you're trying to breathe out, but you're stopping it inside. So you're not letting the air come out. So what happens is you expand and then you lock it down. So you shouldn't actually be thinking about pushing down, right? It should be just use your thumbs, breathe in, and then lock it on, right? And then the belt on top should add that extra layer of brace. Now, if it's tight enough, like when you get your hands and you put them here like that and push them tight, that's what the brace is actually doing. Oh, sorry, the belt is actually doing. So you want to breathe into the belt and then lock it on, okay? And then you need to maintain that as much as possible while you're doing your set. Now, the problem is if you go too hard with this, you start to get a little bit dizzy after a couple of reps, okay? So you need to find that happy balance where you've got enough air in, and you're breathing, and you've got enough air in, you're bracing tight enough, but not enough where you're going to feel like you're going to pass out, and start seeing white. Now, if you're doing sets of 10, that's just the reality, okay? Like it's just going to be hard. When you get good enough at the brace, you don't need to go like that. The only time I would do that is on my first rep, right? And then after that, if I'm doing like a set of 10, I can just do top-up breaths, or I can actually just breathe in each rep. So I'll just go, do this down, I'll come up, like that, and I can just do like these top-up breaths, and I can do a set of 10. If I'm lifting a really heavy weight over like 80+%, I'm doing like you know, 5, 6 reps, that sort of stuff, I would just breathe each rep. So I'd be here, lock it on, come down, breathe out, reset. Squat down, come up, breathe out. All right, so doing that, and that's generally why, like at the start, the weights are not super heavy. You know, we do like sets of 10s, but then it kind of progresses down into where you're doing like 6s and 5s and stuff like that. Just reset each one of those. But if you still haven't nailed the brace yet, or the breathing and brace part, you probably just want to do it every rep. If you're doing it every rep for high reps, you'll get a little dizzy. So again, this is where the skill development comes in. You just need to do it long enough where you can find that happy medium. I think it's also important to understand that your reps are never going to be perfect, and that near enough is good enough. Okay, if from our point of view, we can see you breathing and bracing, we can see the bar on the back, you've got the hip stability going on, you're ticking all the boxes. As you squat down, if you get to depth and it accelerates up, we're just going to say, just make sure you hold your brace. But that's like just takes time. It just takes experience. It's not something that you can learn. Like it will take you years to get really efficient at this process. Like it's like any skill. You know, it's like, golf's pretty easy. Just grab the club and it's like, it's fucking hard. Like, how do you keep the ball straight? One thing I've always wondered, my ball never stays straight. Probably need to practice a little bit more. Probably need to get some lessons too. But it's just a skill like anything, right? Like it just takes time. And you're going to hear the same feedback over and over and over again. But that's what it is. Like there's nothing particularly magical. If you watch all the tutorials over and over where I talk about this stuff in depth, like you'll have an understanding of the concept, but to actually put it into practice, you know, is a different thing. The other thing too is also adjust your weight, your notch on your belt can be a big thing as well. Sometimes it can be a little bit too loose. Try putting it on real, like super tight one time where you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm talking, this is what it sounds like. And just do a couple of reps like that so you can see what being super tight does. You're like, man, I feel so secure. It's like, yeah, but I also can't breathe. It's like, okay, so this is what we're aiming for, but you can't do that in practical. You can't just do sets of 1 and 2s all the time. That would be really inefficient. So again, that's going to have to come from you and your development of being able to do that. But at the same time, yeah, just working the brace.